What if being nice wasn't personality trait, but an actual design choice, a whole species made and defended, not a slogan, not a PR move, settings and real systems that either stay on or get switched off. It really makes you wonder what kindness even means once you spread it across light years and plug it into rules, beacons, and trade contracts. Because it's easy to be kind when nothing is pushing back. The interesting part is what happens when someone leans on that kindness hard, treats it like a weakness, or worse, a resource to steal. Does mercy just crack and vanish? Or does it grow edges? So get comfortable under your blanket, because this story lives right at that edge, out past familiar star lanes. There's a quiet strip of space every pirate and admiral has heard of. The Mercy Corridor. No battleships, no big guns. Just medical convoys and a rule that everyone pretends to respect. You're riding with one of those convoys, the Kestrel, watching humans run this strange experiment. A shipping lane held together almost entirely by trust and carefully written agreements. Some species say it's noble. Some say it's suicidal. You're not sure yet, and just as that doubt settles in your chest, the first raider flotilla slips into the dark beside you. Not to start a war, but to run an experiment of its own. How far can you hurt people who refuse to shoot back before their so-called mercy finally changes shape? Out past the bright circles of settled worlds, there is a thin, quiet lane that many ships cross and very few attack. It does not glow or roar or shout for attention, yet every captain knows where it lies. They know it by its calm beacons, by the steady timing pulses that help lost ships find their way, and by the rule that has held longer than most treaties. This lane is for mercy. Humans call it the Mercy Corridor. Some species speak of it with respect, as if it is a kind of shrine in space. Some speak of it with fear, because they do not understand why humans would spend so much effort on helping strangers. Others mock it in private, saying that humans are soft, that their kindness will snap like thin glass when real pressure comes. You are not sure which group you belong to yet. You are a quiet traveler with the Kestrel Mercy Convoy, a chain of medical ships flowing along the Mercy Corridor toward a wounded border. You are here to watch, to listen, and to see whether human niceness is real courage or just a story humans like to tell about themselves. You carry a small ache of doubt in your chest and a simple question that will not go away. When the first attack comes, that question finally has something to push against. The Mercy Corridor does not look like much from the outside. To your eyes, it is only a line of distant beacons hanging in the dark, each sending out the same gentle timing pulse. There are no heavy guns mounted near those lights, no patrol cruisers circling with threats ready on their tongues, no sharp edges of warning, yet ships move differently when they cross that line. You feel it the moment your convoy enters. The chatter over shared channels grows softer and more careful. Pilots speak with the tone used in hospitals and quiet wards on crowded worlds. Even the way the Kestrel's engines rise and fall feels like a ship that has lowered its shoulders. Around you, the Mercy Corridor stretches ahead like a dim hallway. made of distance and intention instead of walls. People like to say the corridor is simple. It is not complicated in its purpose. It exists so that food, water, medicine, and rescue crews can cross dangerous regions without being pulled into local fights. It sits between rival borders that have changed many times in the last century, touching trade routes and drifting stations that do not want to pick a flag. When arguments grow hot along the edges of space, this lane is supposed to stay cool. To make that possible, humans and their partners built more than just beacons. They placed emergency fuel caches along the route, hidden carefully but easy to reach if a ship sends the right call for help. They agreed on universal medical codes with dozens of species, so that a single pattern of signals means the same thing to every ship that sees it. This vessel is carrying aid and should be left alone. They set up neutral monitors in stations near the corridor. People and machines from many worlds who watch what happens and report it in clear, public detail. In theory, any species can use the corridor, not just humans. They only need to follow the rules. Not just humans. They only need to follow the rules. No weapons, powered. No cargo that feeds ongoing wars. No escort ships that hide fighters inside them. No bait, just mercy. In practice, many of the convoys are human. The Kestrel Mercy Convoy is one of them. It is made of 3 main ships, each built in different yards back in the solar system. Your own berth is on Kestrel 3, which carries doctors, nurses, and a calm, steady woman named Dr. Aisha Monroe. You first see Aisha in the ship's low-gravity ward, walking with practiced care from bed to bed as if there is normal gravity dragging at her feet. She grew up in Baltimore on old Earth, in a neighborhood where the sea walls held back higher tides than anyone had expected when they were built. As a child, she watched water creep closer to streets that carried long memories. She also watched neighbors share food when storms took out the power, watched strangers knock on doors to check on older residents. Later, when floods hit other cities across the planet, she went as part of early climate relief teams. There she learned that saving lives was not just about bandages and medicine. It was about setting up clean water points high enough on hills. On hills, about tuning emergency shelters so that people did not trample each other in fear. About going into meetings with city planners and asking quiet, stubborn questions until they agreed to change old systems that hurt the same families again and again. Aisha carries that history with her now as she moves through the Kestrel. Her voice is soft even when she gives firm instructions. She listens before she speaks. If someone tries to rush her into a quick decision, she slows the conversation instead of speeding it up, as if she knows that the fastest way to fail is to let fear pull on every choice. On Kestrel 1, the lead ship, Commander Lucas Grant, watches the corridor from a wide bay full of projected space. He grew up in San Diego, in a time when human cities had already stretched their systems to the edge. As a teenager, he joined search and rescue crews that moved between earthquakes, fires, and storms. Many times he had to fly small craft into unstable air, pick landing spots between buildings that might fall, and talk with different agencies that did not always trust each other. In that work, he learned a hard lesson. If he focused only on the immediate drama in front of him, he might save a few lives that day. But the same kind of disaster would take more lives the next month. He thinks about where neutral monitors are trusted and where they are not. Every choice he makes circles back to his simple aim: keep mercy flowing for as many people as possible, for as long as possible. On Kestrel 2, Nora Klein lives mainly inside code and quiet hums of hardware. She was born in Pasadena, near observatories that once watched the night sky from Earth. As a child, she loved watching old survey feeds from early Mars bases and deep space probes. Later, she studied risk and systems containment, the field that tries to stop bad patterns before they build into disasters. If he stepped back and looked at patterns, spoke with engineers and planners and social workers, he could help shift the way things were built, the way alerts were sent, the way shelters were stocked. He learned to think like a systems map, always asking how this choice today might close off harm tomorrow. Lucas brings that habit into space. As commander of the convoy, he does not only think about speeding from star to star, he thinks about which routes carry refugees who are about to run out of fuel. He thinks about which ports have weak oversight and might let raiders dock without serious checks. Nora has a habit of standing very still when she thinks, as if she herself is a sensor trying to pick up a faint signal. On Earth, she designed early warning systems for aging power grids and for orbital debris that might crash into crowded habitats. She sometimes said that she worked as a doctor for systems, reading symptom charts in numbers and traffic patterns instead of blood tests. Now her patients are the networks that hold the Mercy Corridor together. She watches navigation timing pulses, checks the health of fuel caches, and tracks strange correlations in ship movements. She looks for signs that someone is quietly using parts of the corridor for profit or war, and she writes reports that help Lucas and Aisha choose where to send scarce patrol drones and extra aid packages. From your shared observation lounge, you watch these three humans move through their tasks as the convoy glides into deeper space. Their paths never seem rushed. Even when there is much to do, conversations fold around them in low tones. People from other species move along the decks as well. Tall, glass-skinned Kithari technicians, dense and careful Harax engineers, dense and careful Harax engineers. A few soft-voiced Cecil mediators who help translate not just words, but habits and fears. Beyond the ships, the Mercy Corridor lives in the minds of countless beings around the galaxy. On commercial channels, traders complain gently that humans get soft routes and special treatment because of their reputation for kindness. They say it is easy to look good when you fly through a protected lane instead of the rough routes. In some military briefings, officers from older powers warn their teams not to underestimate humans. They say in dry voices that humans use friendliness like a shield, hiding their true calculations behind smiles and shared meals. In low-end bars at border stations, smugglers laugh about nice humans who send food to people they have never met. They tell stories of human captains who refused payment after saving stranded ships. They shake their heads and say humans will break. Sooner or later, when someone shows them that mercy cannot survive in the dark too far from home, Other rumors move in the opposite direction. Refugees share memories of Kestrel convoys that arrived with exactly the medicine they needed, even when no one had time to send a clear request. Small worlds remember human doctors who stayed on after the official mission ended, repairing water systems and air filters that had never worked well. Some young officers from far states secretly ask for Mercy Corridor duty because they have heard that in that lane, standards matter more than pride. You carry all these voices in your mind as you float near a large observation port and watch the beacons of the corridor drift. You want to know whether human kindness is just instinct, like a reflex, or whether it is a choice they renew each day, even when it hurts. You wonder what will happen if someone pushes them too far. On the 10th day, as the convoy moves into a region where neutral monitors have warned of increased raider activity, the answer begins to take shape. The Kestrel's grav field hums a little higher as the ships tighten their formation. Lucas stands in the command bay, watching faint signals gather at the corridor's edge. Nora studies interference patterns in the timing pulses, tracing small distortions like a doctor studying a shadow on a scan. Aisha walks the medical decks, checking that triage bays are ready, that staff have slept, that supplies are sorted for fast access. Outside, just beyond the line where the Mercy Corridor's safety is supposed to hold, something waits with engines, idling and weapons dark, watching human ships with hungry patience. The raiders do not charge in with lights blazing and weapons firing in all directions. They are not here for a wild battle that will draw half the sector's fleets. They have studied the Mercy Corridor as carefully as Nora has studied them. Their leader, Veskrai, sits in the narrow command spine of a ship that once hauled ore for a forgotten mining firm. The hull is patched in places with gray market components stamped in many different languages and codes, worn down by years of use. Inside, the air carries a faint, oily taste from recycled filters that have seen too many shortcuts. Vesk did not grow up near shining stations or careful schools. He came from a station where power flickered often, where food shipments arrived late or not at all, where local bosses treated law as a tool rather than a promise. He learned early that the galaxy does not watch out for people like him. He watched other kids with bright eyes join security crews that sometimes guarded cargo and sometimes took it. By the time he reached command of his own small flotilla, he had built a simple rule for survival. Hit soft targets, stay away from heavy navies, and never push big powers hard enough to trigger a serious hunt. The Mercy Corridor bothered him. It was a place where large amounts of valuable cargo moved under weak escort, protected mostly by custom and shared guilt. To Vesk, that mix smelled like opportunity. Still, he is not foolish. He knows many eyes and sensors watch the corridor. He knows that if he turns it into a battlefield, large fleets will come, and his little collection of ships will be turned to dust. So he has designed this attack with care. His goal is to hurt the humans, take what he can, and shame them in front of other powers, all while avoiding a full war. His flotilla slides closer to the corridor under the cover of civilian transponder patterns bought on shady docks. 4 ships move in a wide arc above the lane, 4 move below, and 2 hang back as support. Their weapons stay powered down, pretending to be cargo pods and survey gear inside Kestrel 1. Lucas watches the forward displays with a small frown. The timing pulses from the beacons carry slight scrapes in their shape, now tiny jamming spikes that would look like normal interference to a tired or sloppy eye. Nora is not tired and not sloppy. On her deck, she floats in front of her analysis wall, arms folded, hair pulled back in a loose tie that always escapes its own grip. She runs filters over the pulses again and nods to herself. The interference is not random. It has a rhythm, a pattern that matches known radar tools that sit just outside official military inventories. Someone is trying to blind the corridor in a way that will only show up in fine detail. She sends a data packet to Lucas marked low voice urgent. He calls her up to the command bay. The two of them lean over shared visualizations of the corridor, watching faint signals that do not match any declared traffic. Ayesha joins by link from Kestrel 3. Audio only, her voice a steady point in the room. There is time to divert, a junior officer says. A young Hrax with careful tusks. We can leave the corridor and swing wide until larger patrols arrive. If we leave, Lucas says slowly, we leave the lane empty for other ships that cannot swing wide. If these raiders are smart, they may not want us, but whoever comes next. Aisha's voice comes through with calm weight. And if we stay, we may be pulling them toward loaded medical holds and patients who cannot fight back. Nora traces a path across the visualization. They are using the corridor's own timing pulses, she says. They are shaping their approach around our beacons. They will expect us to run or to call in heavy backup. If we do neither, we will learn how they respond. Lucas is quiet for a few breaths. You can feel the tension in the room, drawn tight but held under control, like a muscle braced. Before lifting. Neutral monitors are online. 2 relay stations and a mobile observer array. All have clean lines on our beacons and regional traffic. They are already watching the interference. Then we stay, Lucas decides. But we will not play into their scene. No counterattack, no chase. We will move to protect the convoy, prepare for boarding, and keep full records. The corridor's purpose does not change because someone wants to test it. Orders spread through the convoy like a slow, even tide. Engines shift their output. Defensive fields charge, but weapons remain powered down. Medical teams secure patients who might be jostled. Cargo handlers lock down crates and tanks. Security staff move to key points with non-lethal tools and hard suits. You feel the ship's hum rise in pitch as the raiders finally cross the line. Veskrai gives a short nod to his crew. Mark now, he says. His voice holds no rage. This is a job. Jamming fields flare to full strength, pushing against the corridors, timing pulses. To outside eyes, the region looks suddenly foggy and uncertain. Distance markers blur. Normal ships would have trouble keeping formation. Vesk's own flotilla is tuned to his jammers, and they slide in smooth arcs toward the convoy. Their first move is not to fire. Instead, they cut in front of the Kestrel ships and trigger controlled microbursts near the lead vessel's drive ring. These are not full weapon strikes. They are sharp, needle-like blows, aimed at struts and sensor nodes, designed to cripple movement and tracking without tearing hulls apart. Kestrel 1 shudders. You feel the deck flex under your feet as the drive ring takes a hit and spins a fraction out of alignment. Warnings roll through ship systems, but the lights stay steady. Lucas grips the rail in front of him but does not bark orders. Instead, he says, "Status. Drive ring 50%, an engineer reports. We can hold formation, but no sharp jumps. Long-range maneuver. Only medical ships." Kestrel 2 and 3 report minor jamming on local sensors. No hull damage. Vesk's second strike takes out a cluster of external antennas, slicing away some of the convoy's ability to broadcast wideband messages. Internal channels remain clear. Vesk means to isolate them. On his bridge, he feels a small twist of pride. So far, everything follows his plan. He sends a tight beam hail, routed through a relay drone, so that its source looks blurred. Human convoy. His voice carries across, translated into clear standard. You have entered contested space. Your escorts are weak. Your drive is injured. You will cut engines and prepare to transfer 50% of medical supplies to our holds. Refusal will lead to further damage, staged in ways that will show your weakness to every monitor in this region. The words reach Lucas, Aisha, and Nora at the same time. In many parts of the galaxy, a commander facing such a message would answer with a blast of weapons or with their own threat. Some would stall for time while hidden guns powered up. Some would shout and curse and promise that the raiders' worlds would burn. Lucas looks at the calm ring of faces in his command bay. Aisha waits on the connected display, arms folded. Nora tilts her head, eyes far away, as she watches data shift. "Open a line," Lucas says. He does not raise his voice. When his words reach Vesk, they are clear and level. This is Commander Lucas Grant of the Kestrel Mercy Convoy. The Mercy Corridor is a protected humanitarian lane, watched by neutral monitors. You have already damaged a drive ring and sensor cluster on medical ships, carrying supplies to civilian populations. Your actions are recorded. We will not transfer cargo under threat. We will, however, offer medical aid to any injured crew, including yours, if you stand down and withdraw from the corridor. On Vesk's bridge, a low laugh moves through his team. To them, Lucas sounds like every story they have heard about nice humans, offering aid to their attackers, talking about monitors and rules instead of showing teeth. Commander Grant. Vesk answers, "You misunderstand your position. I am not here to argue law. I am here to test this story the galaxy tells about your species. They say humans are kind. Let us see how kind you remain when we take your toys apart in front of every watching power." He cuts the line and gives new orders. Target the auxiliary thrusters next, then scrape along non-critical hull, leaving long scars that cameras will love. The attacks continue in sharp, controlled bursts. Plumes of gas vent into space from damaged external structures. Antenna masts crumple. You feel each distant strike through the soles of your boots, like someone tapping their fingers on the hull. Inside the convoy, there is no screaming, no wild rush. Aisha walks her decks with steady steps, checking on staff and patients as if this is simply another kind of storm. When a junior nurse asks whether they should prepare for casualties from a battle, Aisha shakes her head gently. Our focus stays the same, she says. Care for who is here. Prepare space for whoever might come next. Let others worry about looking strong on a screen. In the legal and ethics room, a small group has gathered. There is a Jorian legal scholar whose people have strict traditions about safe passage zones, a human ethics officer from Geneva, and a CESO mediator who has spent decades working on ceasefire terms. They are not debating whether to retaliate. They are writing notes on what has already happened, classifying each raider action against the corridors. Agreed rules, targeting drive capacity, the legal scholar says slowly, is a structured way of saying, we can hurt you more later. It aims at your future missions, not just this one. The ethics officer taps her pen on the table. They are not trying to kill, she says. At least not yet. They are trying to embarrass, to show that you can be hit without hitting back. So the CESO mediator adds, the question is not whether you are allowed to respond. The question is how to respond in a way that changes future behavior, instead of simply trading strikes. Lucas joins them after checking the latest engineering reports. His face is calm, though a small muscle in his jaw works from time to time. We will not fire on them, he says at once. The corridor stays a non-combat zone from our side. If raiders can hit medical convoys, take nothing, and walk away laughing, others will copy. Nora floats into the room, pushing off the doorframe with bare fingertips. She carries a pad dense with numbers and small sketches of signal graphs. I think they have made a mistake, she says. They are using support systems that come from the same network that keeps this corridor safe. They are eating from the hand that they wanted to bite. If we can see exactly how, we may not need to touch their hulls at all. The room grows quiet as she lays out her early findings. The raiders' timing for their attacks matches the fine structure of the corridor's navigation pulses. Their fake civilian transponder patterns use key seeds that come from gray market chips built around human-made timekeeping cores. Some of their fuel route choices suggest hidden use of emergency caches, or at least of maps that show where such caches lie. In other words, Vesk's flotilla moves through space as if it knows the heartbeat of the Mercy Corridor better than it should. Somewhere in its systems, it reaches into the same shared supports that keep lost and broken ships alive. If we change how that heartbeat works for specific attackers, Nora says, we do not need to fire a shot. Their ships will still move, but not well, and not when and where they expect. We can draw a boundary with the systems they rely on, instead of with weapons. The legal scholar leans back, thoughtful. You are speaking of a directive, he says, a formal policy that changes access for future attackers based on clear evidence. Exactly, Nora answers. Narrow, documented. Not general punishment, something any neutral monitor can check, something reversible if they ever choose to repair the harm they cause. Aisha's voice joins from the link once more. Mercy does not mean saying yes to every demand, she says. It means doing what protects the most lives, now and later. If we can stop this pattern of attacks without turning this lane into another battlefield, we owe that to everyone who will ever need to cross here. The group begins to work. They list the systems the corridor controls: navigation timing pulses, access to emergency refuel caches, priority docking at certain safe ports, medical support guarantees, and insurance frameworks that keep freight rates stable along the humanitarian lane. They sort these tools into categories based on how much harm withdrawal would cause to innocent people on the ground. We cannot cut life support to worlds that rely on these shipments, the ethics officer says firmly. Any directive must target the raiders' ability to profit, not the survival of those they have already hurt. So we aim, Nora replies, at timing, fuel safety, and insurance. We make it harder and more expensive to run raids, and easier to stop. While they draft early lines of this new directive, Vesk finally pulls his flotilla away from the convoy. Satisfied for the moment, he has bruised the humans, marked their ships with scars that will show on every camera and report. He has not taken cargo, but he has taken something he thinks is better: an image of humans standing still while someone smacks them in public. Let them patch, he says to his pilot. Let them send reports. Next time we come, they will be more afraid. Back in the Mercy corridor, engineers seal cracks and replace damaged external hardware. Neutral monitors record every step of the attack, and the convoy's calm response, then transmit the data to many interested parties. Some powers shake their heads, saying that humans have proven their softness, that they let raiders leave unharmed. Others look more carefully at the transcripts and see something else. A group of humans who refuse to abandon their purpose, who absorbed an attack without turning their hospital lane into a war zone, and who quietly began to design a different kind of answer. You feel it as the days pass after the attack. The convoy moves more slowly, nursing its damaged drive ring, but the ships do not slink along in shame. Inside, the energy is not broken outrage or despair. It is something cooler and more focused. In meeting rooms and databays, Lucas, Aisha, Nora, and their partners are not asking whether they should stay kind. They are asking how to make that kindness harder to abuse, not just for themselves, but for everyone who will ever trust the Mercy corridor. Again, Nora Klein sat alone in the sensor lab, with only the steady hum of the Kestrel systems for company. The room was dim except for the soft light from the analysis wall in front of her. Lines of data drifted past like slow rain. She tracked them with small movements of her eyes, her hands resting still at her sides. The raiders' attack was already 2 days behind the convoy, yet for Nora it still lived fresh in the numbers. She replayed the jamming patterns again from the moment the first interference touched the Mercy corridor's timing pulses. Most people saw those pulses as simple tools, like road markers. Ships sync their navigation drives to the beacon's heartbeat so that they could jump between microfolds of space safely. To Nora, though, the pulses were more than that. They were the rhythm that held together the whole lane, making sure ships did not crash, stray into minefields, or arrive out of step with each other at narrow choke points. When the raiders had jammed those pulses, they had not just thrown noise on the line. They had reshaped the timing in tiny, careful ways that would only look like background static to lazy monitors. Nora zoomed in on one sequence, stretched it out until each nanosecond-long spike showed clearly. "There you are," she said quietly to herself. The interference had a pattern like a breathing cycle. It rose and fell in a fixed ratio to the original pulse, pushing here, pulling there, bending the shared rhythm just enough to guide Vescaris' flotilla into the convoy's path with smooth, dangerous ease. Nora overlaid the raiders' own engine signatures on top of that pattern. Their drives answered to that distorted rhythm like dancers to a strange piece of music that told her something important. Their navigation cores were not completely independent. They were tuned to the very corridor they wanted to exploit. "Doctor for systems," she muttered, repeating the old joke she used back on Earth. "Your patient has been chewing on its own nerves." She pulled a larger map into view. It showed not just the attack, but the weeks before it. Traffic logs, supply runs, timing drift corrections, emergency cache checks, and neutral monitor reports all stacked together. Each type of data had its own color and texture. To most people, it would look like noise. Nora saw hints of structure. 3 times in the last month, small unmarked ships had passed close to timing beacons and then vanished off official charts. Twice, emergency fuel caches had recorded tiny unauthorized draws that were too small to trigger full alarms, but too exact to be accidents. Several gray market chip shipments had been tagged as lost in transit along routes that hugged the edge of the corridor. She marked each event, then laid Vesk's attack on top of them. Little by little, a thin skeleton of support showed through. It was not perfect, but it was clear enough for a careful mind. They did not build those systems from scratch, Nora said over the internal link. They borrowed from us. Luca's voice came back, steady and alert. Borrowed how? Their timing algorithms match early humanitarian firmware, she said. Not exact copies, but modified versions. Their fake civilian transponders use key seeds based on stolen corridor and navigation cores. Their fuel planning suggests access to maps that include our hidden caches, even if they did not touch most of them. She paused, thinking it through again, trying to see what she might have missed. They are not just parasites on random trade routes, she added. They are half-grafted into the Mercy network itself. A few minutes later, Nora floated into the main strategy room, carrying her tablet and a thin bundle of printed graphs. She liked paper when stakes were high. It forced her to choose only what mattered most. Lucas was already there, standing near a central projection of the corridor. Aisha joined remotely, her image hovering at one side of the room, her face calm and intent. The legal scholar, the ethics officer from Geneva, the CESO mediator, and 2 neutral monitor representatives were also present. Nora laid the graphs on the table and clipped them in place, so they would not drift. Here's what we know, she said, keeping her words simple. The raiders who hit us use navigation timing, tuned to our own beacons. They run gray market chips that rely on human-built timekeeping cores. They likely hold maps that match our emergency cache locations, at least in outline. They have hit this corridor at least twice before, at smaller scales, and likely used our own support systems to keep themselves safe. During and after those strikes, the Jorian legal scholar narrowed his eyes slightly. Are you saying their ability to attack us depends, partly, on the very network that protects this lane? Yes, Nora answered. If the Mercy Corridor is a body, they are using some of its blood and nerves to aim their blows. They cannot move this precisely without the supports we maintained. Aisha leaned forward in her projection. So if we simply destroy their ships the next time, she said, others with the same stolen tools will come. The pattern stays. Nora nodded. Exactly. But if we change how our systems respond to people who attack medical convoys, we can stop this pattern from paying off. We can force raiders to work much harder for far less gain. And we can do it without firing a shot. Lucas crossed his arms, listening closely. Tell us plainly, he said. What are you proposing? Nora tapped the first graph. A new directive, she said. It would say that any group that attacks humanitarian ships in the Mercy Corridor will lose certain forms of access to the corridor's shared support systems. Not punishment for their species, not for whole regions, but for the specific named attackers and their linked vessels. She began listing tools on the wall display, writing them by hand so each stayed clear. First, navigation timing pulses, she said. Right now, every ship near the corridor hears the same clean heartbeat. We could add a thin layer of modulation that only kicks in when a known attacker's signature is present. To everyone else, the pulses stay normal. To them, small delays and phase shifts appear. Their jumps will be slightly off. Their formations will not hold as well. Their ambush windows will slip. She moved to the second item. Second, emergency fuel caches. Currently, any ship in distress can call for access if it provides the usual distress checks. Under the new directive, ships tagged as attackers of medical convoys will not be able to unlock those caches. Even if they pretend to be hurt, they will still have their own fuel, but they will not be able to count on our hidden reserves, she wrote, the third item. Third, support from insurers and safe ports that honor corridor agreements. We can send evidence packets to them through neutral monitors. These packets will show in detail which ships attacked humanitarian traffic, with clear sensor logs. Ports and insurers that want to keep their corridor status will deny priority docking and coverage to these ships until they make restitution. The ethics officer watched her, eyes thoughtful. You are not talking about cutting off basic survival, she said slowly. You are talking about changing how profitable and how safe raiding is. Yes, Nora said. They will still be able to fly. They will still be able to go home, but their raids will become costly, sloppy, and risky. Each ambush will tear at their own support, rather than ours. The neutral monitor from Station Halim spoke next. We can only support this, she said, if the rule is narrow and based on strong evidence. Our job is not to help powers punish their enemies. Our job is to protect agreed zones. That is why we need you, Lucas answered. We do not want a rule that can be twisted into general sanction. We want something small and precise that every honest observer can check. A smallest forever response, as Nora called it in her notes. Nora felt a faint flush, but she did not look away. The phrase had come to her late at night while staring at a blank section of the directive draft. She had thought of Aisha's work back on flooded Earth, of changes in city plans that did not look dramatic on a map, but quietly stopped disasters from repeating. She had thought of Lucas' calm decisions, choosing slow, firm safety over fast revenge. The smallest action, she said quietly, that changes the pattern for as long as possible. The Jorian scholar tapped the table lightly. Let us test it against our principles, he said. Is it narrow? It applies only to ships and crews proven to have attacked humanitarian vessels in the corridor, not to their whole species or regions. It is narrow, the ethics officer agreed. Is it evidence-based? Yes, if neutral monitors gather and publish the sensor logs. Is it reversible? Nora pulled out another sheet. Yes, she said. I propose that any tagged ship can regain full access by entering an amnesty program. They will have to stop raiding, return stolen medical cargo where possible, submit to inspection of their systems, and sign a monitored agreement not to target humanitarian lanes again. Once they do, the timing pulses go back to normal for them. The caches open to them again. The insurers update their records. The CESO mediator smiled slightly at that. So Mercy has a door, he said. Closed when they attack, opened again if they choose change. Aisha's eyes softened. People can do terrible things from hunger and fear, she said. If we leave no path back, we freeze them in those roles forever. That is not what the Mercy Corridor should stand for. Lucas looked around the room. Concerns? He asked. The neutral monitor from the mobile observer array lifted a hand. 2, he said. First, what if a state power copies your approach and claims attackers where there were none, just to cut access to rivals? Second, what if raiders begin attacking the beacons and caches directly, trying to break the system you are using against them? Nora had thought about those as well. For the first, she said, the directive must include a line that says, only attacks recorded and verified by registered neutral monitors can trigger access changes. No self-reporting, no secret evidence. Only data gathered from shared observation points or from overlapping third parties. And for the second? The monitor asked. For the second, Nora replied. We already treat direct attacks on beacons and caches as grave violations. This directive does not change that. If they target the supports themselves, they move from raiders to open enemies of the corridor, and other powers have agreed to respond far more strongly. That line already exists. We are not adding it, just applying a new tool before we reach it. The room sat in careful silence for a few breaths. Finally, the Jorian scholar folded his notes. This is as narrow and clean as such a thing can be, he said. It does not add new punishments. It rearranges access to mercy itself for those who abuse it. I will support it. The ethics officer nodded. So will I, she said. Provided we make the amnesty terms clear and fair, and provided we never hide the directive. It must be public from the start. No secret switches. Agreed, Lucas said. They spent the rest of the day hammering out every line. Nora adjusted technical sections to match legal language. The monitors wrote precise definitions for attack, humanitarian vessel, and corridor support asset. Aisha reviewed the amnesty clauses, making sure they did not ask for impossible acts from raiders whose whole lives were tangled in gray markets and broken contracts. When they finished the draft, the directive fit on 3 pages. It felt almost too small for what it aimed to do. Nora stared at the last line for a long moment. It read, "Mercy in this corridor is a choice and a trust, not an unlimited resource. Access to shared supports will remain open to all who protect that trust. Those who break it by attacking humanitarian traffic will find that the systems they abused no longer serve them until they choose restitution and repair." "There," Aisha said softly over the link. "No more and no less than we must say." Lucas forwarded the draft to Earth, to the Interstellar Humanitarian Council, and to allied bodies that oversaw corridor agreements. While they waited for responses, the Kestrel Convoy continued its steady path, repairing its damaged drive ring piece by piece. Crew on all 3 ships trained for possible boarding, reviewed medical triage plans, and tried to sleep under the gentle pull of artificial gravity. News of the attack spread faster than the convoy itself. On large capital worlds, entertainment feeds replayed clear images of the Kestrel's drive ring shuddering under precision strikes. Commentators from older powers shook their heads. Some called humans brave for staying in the corridor under fire. Others called them foolish for refusing to hit back. They let raiders walk away. A retired admiral from a distant empire said in a widely shared interview, "This is what comes of trying to make moral claims in cold space. Mercy without teeth invites predators." On fringe stations, reaction was more mixed. Some smugglers laughed and slapped each other's shoulders, saying that the nice humans had been finally taught a lesson. Others watched Nora's calm public briefing on the planned directive and felt a quiet chill when she described how access to timing and support would change. The directive was published 3 days after the attack. Neutral monitors released it side by side with logs of the raid, showing how Vesk's flotilla had targeted medical ships without taking steps to avoid civilian harm. They attached charts of navigation pulses, graphics of jamming signatures, and lists of exact hull IDs involved. The directive did not roar across the galaxy. It landed more like a stone dropped into calm water, steady and plain. Merchant coalitions studied the amnesty clauses with careful attention. Insurance firms ran models on the cost of covering ships that might someday be tagged under the new rule. Port authorities held quiet meetings in back rooms, deciding whether they would sign on fully, partly, or not at all. "Humans are changing the rules," a Frax trade minister said in a private briefing that was later leaked. "They are saying that kindness is not something you can steal for free." They are building a switch into their mercy. Some leaders felt unsettled by that thought. For years, humans had been treated as the helpful newcomers of the spacefaring world. They brought fresh energy, steady medical teams, and environmental repair crews. They opened their own routes and joined shared ones. They spoke often of cooperation, of mutual support, of learning from older civilizations. Now, with this small directive, they showed something else. They were willing to shape the systems everyone used, and to tie mercy to behavior in a direct technical way. What if they extend this idea? A nervous delegate asked during a council debate on the far station. What if tomorrow they decide that anyone who fights on certain battlefields loses access to their clean water filters? Will we find that human kindness always had a dial we did not see? The Jorian scholar who had helped draft the directive answered in a measured tone. Any power can misuse tools, he said. The question is who writes the rules and how clear they are. In this case, humans have put the rule in full light, tied it to one narrow action, and given a path back. That is not tyranny. That is boundary. On the Kestrel, Nora read these debates during her off hours, but did not let them distract her. Her work now was to prepare the technical parts of the system, so that when the directive went live, it would act exactly as written, and no more. She tuned the corridors, timing pulses, adding faint modulations that would only react when a specific set of ship signatures tried to sync too closely. She helped neutral monitors update their verification software so that data from multiple sources could be fused into clear evidence packets. She wrote code that would handle amnesty completions automatically, restoring normal access the moment a ship met all conditions. Once, late during a long night cycle, Aisha visited her lab in person instead of by link. The older woman floated beside her in silence for a while, watching the graphs. "Does it trouble you?" Aisha asked gently. Turning our supports into something that can also deny, Nora kept her eyes on the data for a few moments longer before answering. "A little," she admitted. "I like building systems that only help, but ignoring the way raiders already use these tools feels worse. They are already bending our kindness into a weapon. If we do nothing, the corridor will slowly rot into another hunting ground." Aisha nodded. "On Earth," she said, "I once helped write a rule that said if a landlord refused to repair broken heating for too long, the city would automatically cut off certain tax benefits. Some argued that we were turning support into a weapon, but without that rule, many children froze in damp houses. Sometimes holding back help from those who abuse it is the only way to protect those who need it most." Nora smiled faintly. "So this is just an old story in a new place," she said. "The names change," Aisha replied, "but the questions do not." When the technical work was complete, Lucas called a final review. They checked the timing of each trigger, the clarity of each definition, the exact path by which neutral monitors would send evidence and ports would log it. They ran simulations with fake raider signatures, watching virtual ships stumble as their timing pulses shifted and emergency caches stayed dark. "It will not stop every attack," Lucas said at last. Some raiders will not use our systems. Some will choose other routes. But here, along this lane, it will change the math. That is enough, Nora answered. We are not trying to fix the whole galaxy with 3 pages of rules. We are trying to make this one corridor safer, in a way that endures. The directive went live on a quiet watch, with no fanfare. In a hidden maintenance bay near a distant beacon, firmware updated. In a string of small stations along the corridor, cache control software accepted new lists of excluded ship IDs. In the databases of insurers and ports that had signed on, a new field appeared. Attacker of humanitarian traffic, yes/no. Amnesty status, pending/completed, far away. Veskri did not feel anything shift in that moment. His ships still floated in their usual orbits. His crew still ran checks on patched-up hulls and improvised systems. He heard the news of the directive in bits and pieces, laughed at it with his lieutenants and called it a scare tactic. On the Kestrel, however, people felt a quiet change settle around them. The Mercy Corridor had always been described in simple terms. A safe lane, a hospital hallway in space. Now, for those who tried to hunt in it, that hallway had a hidden slope. Their steps would slip. Their plans would fall out of sync. For everyone else, the beacon still shone steadily. The timing pulses still beat with calm precision. Fuel caches stood ready for ships in real distress, and medical convoys, like the Kestrels, kept moving supplies across hostile borders. You stood again at the observation port as another beacon drifted by, its distant light steady against the dark. As distant pegs or die against the dark, you thought about what you had seen over these days. Attacks endured without revenge, long meetings filled with careful words, a small team of humans and allies turning anger into a quiet piece of code and law. You had come to see if human niceness was real, or just a clever story. Now you began to understand that, for these people at least, kindness was not a soft cushion that broke at the first push. It was a setting in a larger system, chosen and guarded, with boundaries laid down like rails. Somewhere not far ahead, beyond several more beacons, Veskris' flotilla was preparing another test, still sure that mercy meant weakness. The corridor was ready for him now, not with bigger guns, but with rules tuned to the same deep systems he had taken for granted.